The ranch appeared slowly, as if it had been hiding from the road on purpose. Miles of open land stretched beneath a wide, unforgiving sky, broken only by fencing, grazing cattle, and the distant outline of low buildings. When she stepped out of the truck, the wind carried the smell of dust, hay, and something older like history baked into the soil. This was not the kind of place that welcomed people as Ellie. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder, reminding herself why she had come. The job was simple. Cook for the cowboys. No questions, no complications, just honest work and a chance to start over. After everything she'd left behind, simplicity felt like survival. The men noticed her immediately. Conversations slowed. A few nodded politely. Others watched with open curiosity. They were rough-looking, but not unkind sun-worn faces. Quiet confidence, the kind of men shaped by long days and little rest. One of them introduced himself as the foreman and showed her where the kitchen was, laying out rules and schedules with efficiency. And then there was him. He stood slightly apart from the others, leaning against a fence, hat low over his eyes. He didn't stare. He didn't smile. Yet she felt his attention like weight steady and assessing. When their eyes met briefly, something passed between them, unspoken and unsettling. He tipped his hat once, a small acknowledgement, then turned away as if she were no more important than the passing wind. As she followed the foreman inside, she noticed something strange. When that quiet cowboy moved, others subtly shifted to make room. No one ordered him around. No one joked with him the way they did with the rest. It wasn't fear but respect. The kitchen was large, worn, and well-used. She ran her fingers along the wooden counters, grounding herself. This place held stories. Maybe too many. That night, as the sun sank behind the hills and shadows stretched long across the land, she felt it clearly. The ranch was keeping secrets, and she had just stepped into the middle of them. Mornings on the ranch came early and loud. Boots hit the floor before sunrise, coffee brewed strong, and plates were emptied as quickly as she could fill them. Cooking for cowboys was nothing like the small diners she'd worked in before. These men ate with the hunger of people who earned every bite. She learned names, habits, preferences, who liked extra biscuits, who avoided conversation before dawn, who stayed late at the table just to talk. Slowly, she became part of the rhythm of the ranch-an essential piece. Even if no one said it out loud, the quiet cowboy remained an exception. He appeared often, but never lingered. He fixed broken hinges without being asked, carried heavy sacks as if they weighed nothing, and disappeared again into the land. When he spoke, it was brief but thoughtful. He never complained, never explained himself. Once, she thanked him for repairing the stove. He shrugged and said, "Didn't need fixing long." Nothing more. Still, she noticed things. When disputes broke out between hands, his presence alone settled them. When decisions needed approval, eyes drifted toward him. And though he dressed like the rest, there was something about him that didn't belong to hired labor. He carried himself like the land answered to him. One evening, as the others filtered out, he stayed behind, sitting quietly at the counter while she cleaned. The silence felt comfortable, not forced. He asked her how long she planned to stay. She admitted she didn't know. He nodded, as if he understood more than she'd said. "This land has a way of holding on to people," he said finally. She asked him how long he'd been there. "Long enough," he replied. Their eyes met, and for the first time, she saw something beneath his calm guarded emotion! Regret, maybe. Before she could ask more, he stood and left, the door swinging shut behind him. As she turned off the lights, one thought stayed with her. He wasn't just another cowboy, and whatever secrets the ranch held, he was standing right at the center of them.
The discovery wasn't planned. It never was. She was reorganizing the pantry late in the afternoon, shifting crates that hadn't been touched in years, when she noticed a loose board behind one of the shelves. Curiosity tugged at her harder than caution. She pried it open just enough to see a narrow space hidden between the wall and the storage frame. Inside were old papers, yellowed, brittle at the edges, tied together with twine. She hesitated. She knew better by now. The ranch had made it clear that some things were not meant to be found, but something about the careful way the documents were hidden told her they mattered. And once she started looking, she couldn't stop. They were land deeds, maps, survey records stamped decades old. One name appeared again and again, written in firm, familiar strokes. A name she had heard spoken with respect, but never explanation. His. Her breath caught. The dates stretched back generations, long before the current foreman, long before most of the men working the ranch had even been born. This wasn't just ownership, it was inheritance, legacy. She barely heard his footsteps until he was already there. "Put those back." His voice was calm, but the tension beneath it was unmistakable. She turned, papers still in her hands. His eyes moved from the documents to her face, something like regret flickering across his expression. "You shouldn't have found those," he said quietly. "You own this place," she replied, the truth settling heavy in her chest. "Don't you?" He didn't answer immediately. He reached for the papers, hesitating only a moment before taking them from her hands and retucking them into their hiding place. When he straightened, the distance between them felt wider than ever. "It's complicated," he said. "Everything here is complicated," she shot back. "But you let me believe you were just another cowboy." His jaw tightened. "I didn't lie. You let me assume." For the first time since she'd known him, his composure cracked. "Because once people know who I am, they stop seeing anything else." The words lingered, unfinished. He replaced the shelf board, sealing the secret away once more. "Please," he added, softer now, "don't go digging again." She watched him leave, heart racing, knowing one thing with certainty. The ranch's biggest secret was no longer buried, and neither were her feelings. The truth didn't stay hidden long. 2 days later, a meeting was called near the main barn. Every man on the ranch showed up, faces drawn, voices low. Something was wrong. She stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching as the foreman paced. There were rumors of outside interest, buyers, developers, legal threats, people who wanted the land for what it could become, not what it was. "Ownership needs to be clarified," the foreman said carefully, "before this gets out of hand." Silence fell. Then the quiet cowboy stepped forward. "I'll handle it." All eyes turned to him. He removed his hat, running a hand through his hair, and for the first time, there was no hiding. No blending in. No pretending to be just another man earning his keep. "The ranch is mine," he said evenly. "It has been for generations." The words hit harder than any shout could have. She felt the air leave her lungs, not from surprise, but from the finality of hearing it spoken aloud. Around them, reactions rippled, shock from some, understanding from others. A few nodded, as if they'd known all along. "I stayed quiet because this land's been targeted before," he continued, "because outsiders see profit where we see home, and because the more attention it gets, the more likely it is to be taken." The foreman didn't argue. He simply stepped back, ceding control. Later, she confronted him near the fence line, the land stretching endlessly behind him. "You should have told me," she said. "I wanted to," he admitted. "But once you know, you're part of it. Part of the risk." She searched his face, seeing not deception but fear, of losing the land, of losing control, of losing her. "You didn't just hide the truth," she said quietly. "You hid yourself." He met her gaze. "I didn't know how to be both." The ranch lay silent around them, no longer pretending. The secret was out. The truth stood bare in the open, and nothing, between them or the land beneath their feet, would ever be the same again. After the truth came out, the ranch didn't erupt into chaos the way she expected. Instead, it grew quiet. Too quiet. Men who once moved with easy confidence now paused, waiting for direction. Some treated him with new respect, others with unease. The balance that had held the ranch together shifted, and everyone felt it, including her. She kept her distance, not because she didn't care, but because caring now felt dangerous. Every time she saw him, she remembered how easily he had slipped between roles, cowboy, owner, protector, without ever letting her see the full picture. It made her question every moment they'd shared. He noticed. Of course he did. One evening, as she finished cleaning the kitchen, he stood just outside the door, hands shoved into his pockets, uncertainty written across his face. "I never meant to put you in the middle of this," he said. "But you did," she replied quietly. "And I didn't get to choose." The words stung him. She saw it. He didn't argue. "I thought keeping it quiet was the safest way," he said. "For the land, for everyone." "And what about honesty?" she asked. "What about trust?" He had no answer, not one that would fix what had already been done. Later that night, she packed a bag, not to leave immediately, but to remind herself that she could. The ranch had begun to feel like a place where decisions were made for her, and she refused to lose herself again. From his side, the weight of ownership pressed heavier than ever. Threats were becoming real now. Letters from developers, calls from lawyers, interest he could no longer deflect. Keeping secrets had once protected the ranch. Now, they'd made it vulnerable. And somewhere between protecting the land and protecting her, he realized he might lose both. The warning came at dawn. A truck she didn't recognize rolled up the long drive, kicking dust into the pale morning light. Men in pressed shirts stepped out, carrying clipboards and confidence that didn't belong on land like this. Developers, surveyors, outsiders. They weren't asking anymore. She watched from the porch as voices rose near the barn. Papers were waved, lines were drawn, on maps and in the dirt. The ranch was no longer just home. It was opportunity to people who saw acres instead of history. He stood his ground. "This land isn't for sale," he said evenly. "That depends," one of them replied, "on what the courts decide." The threat was clear. The ranch could be tied up, divided, stripped of what made it whole. That night, she found him alone, staring out at the fields. The distance between them still existed, but the danger made it smaller. "They're counting on confusion," she said, "on people not knowing where they stand." He looked at her. "And now they do." Together, they worked through old records, timelines, boundaries, everything that had once been hidden now laid out in the open. She helped organize documents, identify inconsistencies, and prepare the ranch hands for what was coming. For the first time, she wasn't on the outside of the secret. She was part of the defense. When the developers returned, they weren't met with uncertainty, but unity. The ranch hands stood together. The lines were clear. The land was claimed, not just legally, but emotionally. As the truck finally pulled away, the threat not gone but stalled, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The ranch was still standing, and so were they. The ranch didn't return to normal after the danger passed. It became something better. The land seemed to breathe easier, as if it too had been waiting for the truth to surface. Mornings were still early, the work still hard, but there was a steadiness now. No whispered conversations, no locked doors guarding old fears. The ranch was no longer protected by secrecy, but by the people who stood on it together. He changed first, not in grand gestures, but in the way he showed up. He spoke openly during meetings, shared plans instead of carrying them alone, trusted others with decisions that once weighed only on his shoulders. The men responded not out of obligation, but loyalty. They knew where they stood and who they stood with. She noticed the difference. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the fields gold, he found her at the edge of the pasture. No hat, no distance. "I won't ask you to forget," he said. but I hope you can see who I am now." She studied him. The man who had hidden behind silence, the owner who had learned the cost of control, the cowboy who had never stopped caring even when it scared him. "I don't need perfection," she said. "I need honesty." He nodded. "You'll have it." She chose to stay, not because the ranch needed her, but because she wanted to build something that was hers, too. Her role grew beyond the kitchen. She helped plan, organize. It didn't take long for her to realize that the ranch operated on more than schedules and routines. There were rules that weren't written down, rules everyone seemed to know except her. She discovered the first one by accident. Late one afternoon, after the lunch rush had passed and the heat settled heavy over the land, she stepped outside to clear her head. The quiet cowboy had mentioned a storage shed where extra supplies were kept, and she figured she'd save herself time by checking it before dinner. The path led her farther from the main buildings than she'd been before, past a line of cottonwoods and toward an older structure set low against the land. The moment she reached for the door, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Don't go in there!" She turned to see the foreman striding toward her, his expression tight in a way she hadn't seen before. It wasn't concern. It was warning. He placed himself between her and the building, as if shielding it. "I was just looking for—" she began. "Doesn't matter," he interrupted. "That area's off limits." The words were final. No explanation offered. No apology. She nodded slowly, stepping back, unsettled by the intensity of his reaction. As she walked away, she glanced over her shoulder. The foreman stayed put until she was well out of sight, guarding the door like it held something valuable or dangerous. That night, the ranch felt different. As she worked in the kitchen, laughter rose and fell from the bunkhouse, but underneath it all, there was tension. She overheard fragments of conversation, low voices that stopped when she entered the room. A phrase repeated more than once. "Best not let that get out." She didn't know what that was, only that everyone seemed invested in keeping it hidden. When she finally lay down to sleep, the wind rattling the windows, one thought kept circling her mind. This ranch didn't just have rules, it had boundaries meant to protect something buried deep beneath the surface. The quiet cowboy found her that evening long after the others had finished eating. She was wiping down the counters, the kitchen lit only by a single hanging bulb, when she heard his boots behind her. Unlike the others, he didn't announce himself. He never did. "You okay?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. No one else had noticed her unease, or at least, no one had cared enough to ask. "I'm fine," she said, then hesitated. "This place just has a way of making you feel watched." He leaned against the counter, folding his arms. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, "That's because it's been fought over more than people realize." She looked at him sharply. "The land?" He nodded. "Land like this doesn't stay quiet on its own." There was something different about him tonight. Less guarded. The walls he usually kept firmly in place seemed thinner, worn down by exhaustion or something heavier. She told him about the locked building, about the foreman's reaction. He listened without interruption, his jaw tightening slightly. "You didn't break any rules," he said. "You just got close to one." That answer only raised more questions. Why keep secrets from your own people? His gaze met hers, steady and searching. "Because sometimes knowing the truth makes things harder to protect." The silence stretched between them, charged but calm. Outside, the land lay dark and endless, the ranch breathing quietly around them. She asked him why he stayed. He exhaled slowly. "Because this place is tied to me in ways I can't walk away from." For the first time, she saw the weight he carried, not physical, but emotional. Responsibility etched deep beneath his calm exterior. She reached out before she could stop herself, her fingers brushing his hand. He didn't pull away. Instead, his hand turned slightly, acknowledging the touch without fully claiming it. For a moment, the world narrowed to that small point of contact. The almost, the unspoken. Then he stepped back, breaking the spell. "You should be careful here," he said quietly. "Not everyone's going to protect you the way they should." She wanted to ask him if he would, wanted to ask who he really was. But he turned and left before she could speak. Alone again in the kitchen, she realized something had shifted. Whatever secrets the ranch held, they weren't just about land or money anymore. They were about him, and whatever truth he was trying desperately to keep buried.